Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons. Law is my ministry. Justice is my passion. We seek justice and reparations for the survivors and the descendants of those who suffered the massacre. It's real simple.
The way we got involved was Demario reached out to get help on an intellectual property issue about the misuse of a likeness from the massacre. And we said we'd be happy to help on that project, but we said, is there anything else we can do?
It was a lot of a David versus Goliath situation where Demario and his small firm was up against the City of Tulsa, the Chamber of Commerce, and the other defendants that were basically taking a broad sort of scorched earth defense of this case. And he openly welcomed Schulte joining the cause.
It's just been a great experience to see SRZ just dive in unselfishly and say this is something that is important to us as an organization, but also important as people.
We do believe that it is our collective duty, our moral obligation, our professional obligation as lawyers, as human beings, to use our privilege, our immense privilege, and the resources that we have to help Greenwood access justice through the legal system.
This whole thing is bigger than this one case that we're bringing. It's about this real movement for justice.
What we have to do in America is finally have a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
Have a day of reckoning where the truth be told. And I think what has happened in Tulsa, though, really sets us on the right course.
Justice for Greenwood! Justice for Greenwood! Justice for Greenwood! As you know, we filed the public nuisance case September 1st, 2020, which simply says a nuisance was created in 1921 that has continued and gotten worse each and every year. And we want that nuisance to be abated.
What makes this case so fascinating is that Oklahoma has a really unique public nuisance law, which basically says if there is an ongoing public nuisance, that there is no time bar on bringing a claim.
This is a great legal theory. This should work, and this will be a chance for the survivors and descendants of survivors of the massacre to get justice, which they haven't had for 100 years.
We don't know what all it takes to completely abate the nuisance that is here in North Tulsa. The nuisance that we see every day when we see that highway running through our community. The nuisance we see when we see on the south side of the highway, it is a first-rate city, and on the north side of the highway where we live is a third world country.
Just the wealth gap in this community that exists due to an event that we can trace. We know what happened and we know why. People think about it as being so far removed. It happened 100 years ago, like let's just start fresh, but you can't do that until the wrongs of the past are addressed. I feel like when I explain kind of the demands of the case to people, I think they're surprised of the reasonableness of what we are asking for.
Our defendants claim that we are asking to cure society of racism in our claims. It's absurd. We want the survivors and the descendants to have the opportunity to be compensated for the harm that they have endured for the last 100 years.
We're asking for the establishment of a land trust and give our dang land back. We want our land back.
There was a hospital in 1921, and 100 years later, there's no hospital in that community, in that neighborhood at all. There's no hospital at all in North Tulsa.
We want a hospital built in our community so we can have first-rate health care. So when these people talk about we asking for money, we asking for life. We asking for liberty. We asking for property. And we want it back because it's ours, it is ours, it is ours.
America is loud and strong when criticizing predators of genocide across the globe. Yet, our nation's voice have historically and inexcusable been silent in the face of similar actions that occurred right here on our homeland to Black people.
What happened here in Tulsa happened everywhere. White-led massacre also burned Wilmington in the same fashion that it burned Tulsa. In Durham, North Carolina, in Birmingham, and Boley, not too far from here, in Mound Bayou, the stories go on.
I stand here incredibly humbled and awestruck of the survivors and all of you, the entire community. We are there for you. We are proud to be part of this. We cannot wait to see victory and justice for Greenwood and for Black communities across the country. When you rise, everybody will rise.
I have waited for 100 years. We need this. We earned this. So, I'm waiting.
Good morning, everyone. My name is DJ Mercer, and I am the Descendant Coordinator for Justice for Greenwood, and I would like to welcome you all to the inaugural Survivor and Descendant Homecoming. I see a bunch of descendants out here. I see Consuelo Miles, Heather Vickers, Africa Shaw, Star Johnson, Michael Johnson. Excuse me if I missed you. But we want to thank you all for coming to our event today and coming back to Tulsa. If you are in Tulsa, we are thankful to have you here. If you are watching live, wherever you are, we thank you as well for being a part of this, because without you all, we are nothing. And together, we are Greenwood. So as we are Greenwood, we are trying to and continuing to bring back and start the connection amongst the descendants, between each other, between us, as well as back to Tulsa, because Tulsa cannot move forward without healing the repair, and with the repair that has been done, with the devastation over 100 years ago on a few days from now, the 101st anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. That's right. So once again, I thank you all for being here at this inaugural Survivor and Descendant Homecoming. And I want you all to take on you all with a little journey today. So in order to get here, a lot of things had to be done, specifically by a person who is in this room, who is leading the fight on this movement. As you can see, on the left, we have Dr. John Hope Franklin, and on the right, we have Dr. Charles Ogletree. And there's also somebody else you may recognize. In the middle, looking on, soaking up the knowledge, standing on the shoulders of giants, is Demario Solomon Simmons, because you cannot lead a fight unless you've gone through the fight before. He's been doing this work for decades, and now is the time. Everybody else, we stand on their shoulders. We are continuing to fight because this is what Tulsa does. Tulsa does not give up. Greenwood does not give up. And that's why you all are here today, because you all are living descendants of your ancestors, continuing to fight, being resilient and strong descendants. But not only is Demario a great lawyer, he also has some amazing supporters. So here's a message from a great supporter of his a while back.
Demario Solomon Simmons, you're everything we tell our young people we want them to be. You have done what we've asked you to do. First of all, you went to school and you got educated. You did what your parents told you to do. And having been educated, you decided that you were going to help educate others in a formal way and an informal way. And you decided that you were going to take an issue that had been excluded from our history books, an issue that had not been talked about for 75 years. And you were going to do something about it, and something you have done. I appreciate your leadership. I thank you for showing other young people what they ought to be doing. I thank you for not simply being a buppy who's looking for a dollar, who's simply looking for the trip to the mountain.
Pride of Peoria, person who grew up and was born in North Tulsa, started his educational journey at Hawthorne Elementary, then went to Carver Middle School, then continued to ascend the educational mountaintop at the Booker T. Washington High School Hornets, and then to round out a finishing school at OU Law School. I would love to bring out a person who I describe as a bully for the people, a person who has been described as, by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, formidable, influential, and strong professor of today. He has been, Demario described as, by that person, as the modern day Thurgood Marshall. I would love to bring up Demario Solomon Simmons.
Justice for who? Justice for who? Justice for who? Man, it's so wonderful to see everyone online. You know, you guys are the reason we do this work. It's the reason that every morning we figure out as a team, what do we need to do to get closer to true and real justice for Greenwood? And as DJ stated, I've had the pleasure of standing on the shoulders of giants and being at their feet learning. And I'm going on 25 plus years of this fight. And each day I get more and more convinced that we will be successful. And on this rainy morning, we've been dealing with weather in Tulsa. For you all to be here is amazing. So what we want to talk about today is give you a real overview of the work that we have done over the last year with Justice for Greenwood. But before we can talk about that overview, we must first be very clear about why the work is necessary. And the work is necessary because of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, the worst massacre in modern American history. 40 square blocks of our community, right where we're standing and sitting right today, was bombarded from the air. 10 to 15,000 of our mothers and grandmothers and uncles and friends and neighbors lost everything. Conservatively, $50 to $200 million in property damage alone. We're not talking about the human life. We're not talking about the business opportunities, the economic opportunities, just the property damage alone. 40 square blocks burnt to the ground. 40 square blocks burnt to the ground. And when we talk about that in the abstract, I don't think people can really understand how devastating that was for our people. And let's be clear, it was not Tulsa that was bombed. It was Greenwood that was bombed. And that is why our organization and our fight is justice not for Tulsa, but justice for who? For Greenwood. And when we talk about justice and we look at some of these pictures, and I hate to be able to show some of these pictures, but we need to understand the gravity of this situation and why when others try to use our pain and our destruction and our death and the blood of our family members to enrich themselves, it offends us to the highest level. And we want to make sure that we have proper deference for the lives that were lost. Now this photo right here, I showed it in court a couple of weeks ago. It says charred Negro. We don't even have a name for what happened. We don't even know if this is a man or a woman. But it was one of our people. That's what we call this. We are Greenwood. Because Greenwood was a love story. And when I say it's a love story, because the people loved each other so much that a shoe shine boy by the name of Dick Rowland, he was not rich. He was not powerful. He didn't own any property. He didn't have a successful business. He was a shoe shine boy that the white people wanted to lynch. But the most powerful, the most prominent, the most wealthy black men in Greenwood said no, because he's one of ours. He's Greenwood, I'm Greenwood, we are Greenwood. These are our people, the pictures we're looking at. The humiliation, the property damage. Businesses built over a lifetime, destroyed in hours. Relationships destroyed. Survivors saying, I never saw my mother again. I never saw my brother again. I never saw my neighbor again. I don't know if they died. All I know is I never saw them again. And then you got to think about those who started fighting. And I mean, first of all, and let's be real clear for the entire world. Yes, we eventually were destroyed. We were outgunned and outmanned, but our people fought. And they put some people in the ground too. And it's important to acknowledge that. And that's why we still stand on those shoulders fighting to this very day. And right after the massacre, you had great lawyers in a tent filing lawsuits days after the massacre. Can you imagine that type of fortitude, that type of courage, days after the massacre? And then you have these survivors who I started working with back in 2000. All of these people we see on this screen, Eddie Faye Gates, Otis Clark, Olivia Hooker, none of these people are with us anymore. Going to Congress, going to the White House, going to the Supreme Court. John Hope Franklin, Hazel Jones, still talking to everybody we could, asking for justice, demanding justice. Today, we stand on all of these individuals' shoulders and everyone else who's impacted by Greenwood. So what I would like us to do is just stand for one moment and let's have a moment of silence for the people that suffered the massacre, the people that suffered the immediate aftermath of the massacre, being inside of concentration camps, living in tents for 18 months, having to rebuild if you were not killed, having to rebuild if you were not exiled and never be able to come back, and rebuild without any insurance payments. You couldn't get your money out the bank. Yet they persevered, and to this very day, we have 3 living survivors who are in this room right now. Yeah, give them a hand of they're in this room right now getting interviewed. But let's just take a minute of silence to think about your family members, your neighbors, your friends who suffered this, who fought for this, and we represent them today. So let's just take 1 minute. I don't know about you, but I feel the spirit. I feel the evidence. I feel the ancestors. And they're proud today. They're happy today. But we're still fighting. We're still here. They tried to wipe us out, but we're still here. You're here. You're here. Okay, you may be seated. We got the proper spirit in here. We're ready to go. Today's going to be a great day. It's already been a great day. I'm going to tell you all about what we've done this last year. And we're going to give you some updates. Then you're going to hear from one of my staff members, Dave Ritchie, to talk about a very specific project that we are going to make sure, as best we can, that we are a part of, and we get the benefit of development that's happening here in Greenwood. Then we have our luncheon, and then we're going to come back and eat more food and have a nice time of partying, because this is the homecoming, right? This is the homecoming. This is the homecoming. So let's get started. So the mission of our organization is very clear. We seek justice and reparations for the Greenwood community and the diaspora. And we say diaspora, wherever you are. If you are in France, which we have descendants there, if you're in Bowling, Oklahoma, if you're in Kansas City, Missouri, or you're right here in Tulsa, we seek justice and reparations for you and your family in this community. That is our mission. That is what we focus on each and every day. And if anybody is working in a space dealing with Greenwood, we're asking them the question, how are you helping us get justice and reparations for our people? This is our team. You see everyone here with a purple shirt on. It's a part of our team that's working hard. And I see Delantrice is in the back. I see Jordan's in the back. Chad is up front. He don't have a shirt. He's working here. But you have a magnificent team of folks that are working hard all over this country, working hard on your behalf. Give them a round of applause. They work really hard. I promise you. A diverse team of people that love this community. This is your legal team. This is your legal team. Give the legal team. We have lawyers all over this nation that have put in millions of dollars in time, and are prepared to do whatever it takes to get justice. We will do whatever we can that's legally allowable for us to get justice from a legal team and from a political team. Here are some of our supporters. This is not everyone, but I think it's important for everyone to understand that we have support of some of the greatest, most powerful civil rights organizations, media organizations, community organizations across the city and across this nation. And that is very important, because many of the people in this city who have all the power and who have all the money, they oppose our work. They don't support our work. And they actively try to sabotage our work to get you justice. But by the grace of God and our ancestors, that these supporters from across this nation continue to stand with us. And one of those supporters is in this room. I thought I saw Laura Pitter with the Human Rights Watch. I know she's here. I saw her earlier. That is here today, that's standing shoulder to shoulder, providing resources, man and woman power, and organizational capacity. We could not do our work without the team. I cannot do this work without our team and without these supporters. Give them a round of applause. Now, we have 4 major programs through the Justice for Greenwood Foundation. 4 major programs. Number 1 is our We Are Greenwood. That is our oral history and genealogy project. And these are our priorities. I'm not going to read each and every one of them, because we're going to send this to everyone that's registered. You have this PowerPoint. But one of the things that we're focusing on has never really happened before in history is to identify every individual and entity that experienced the massacre and its immediate aftermath. Because we know that it was 10,000 to 15,000 people that lived in Greenwood at the time of the massacre. But we also know that at any time, there could be 20 to 25,000 Black people in Greenwood living, working, visiting, enjoying themselves, recreational things, right? And we say this number in the abstract, but we want to know each and every individual that suffered the actual massacre and the immediate aftermath, which we call the immediate aftermath is the 2 years from 1921 to 1923, who lived in tents, who dealt with everything that happened during that time period. That is an awesome task. But I'm excited because, as you're going to see, we've already identified about 6,000 other people. That's amazing work. We also going to identify all descendants from those people. And we know there's tens of thousands of descendants. We're going to identify. We're going to fully document the survival stories and your stories as descendants. That's what we have going on right now in the other rooms. People being interviewed for the story gathering. Because we're doing that work to make sure that your stories are captured and known forever. So, how have we prospered from last year when we had this discussion? In the last year, we've added 225 people to our descendant community. So we're up to 625 names of descendants that are part of Justice for Greenwood. And let me explain to you what that means to be in our descendant community. We're like the Me Too movement. If you say you're a descendant, we believe you. You self-identify, we believe you. However, if you want to be chronicled, we got to do a little more work. And all of you guys know that because you've been working on this process. So once you self-identify, then to be pending chronicle, what that means is we can document you to make sure that when resources come, you can say, hey, I'm a documented descendant. I'm chronicled. Now, again, we do that for the protection of our descendants and the integrity of our organization. We believe you what you say, but we know that other people don't. Because the first thing we want to say, well, how do we know who you are? So how do we know that is when you tell us, and all of you in this room know this process, when you say, hey, I'm a descendant, you tell us, who's my ancestor? And once you tell us who the ancestor is, we have a listing of documents that we can go to and say, can we find that ancestor was in Greenwood at the time of the massacre? And once we do that, the next step is for you as an individual to provide your birth and death certificate to link you to that ancestor. And once we do that, you're fully chronicled. That protects us as an organization, our integrity, but more importantly, it protects who? It protects the descendant community. Because we don't want anyone that doesn't belong to be in here causing us problems. Because we are Greenwood, and we want to make sure that we keep, because it's a love affair, it's a love story. So I'm proud to report that in that work, we've hired a couple of genealogists. We have a world-class genealogist, our lead genealogist, Angela Walton. Some of you may be familiar with her. She's done genealogy for 30 plus years. Very excited about having her on board. We have a full-time program manager, Greta Smith. Many of you talked to Greta, running this program. She is an oral historian, native of Tulsa, lives in Portland, Oregon, doing a fantastic job. To date, out of our 625 people that are in our network, we have 19 chronicled descendants. We have about 100 more descendants who are pending. So this work is moving forward. This is absolutely amazing. Now, we have a lot of people that are in a relationship with us that we know are descendants because I'm from this community. That's why it's important for all of you to tell your family members, send their documents in. Send their documents in so we can get them fully chronicled and get this nice certificate I'm going to pass out later today. I told you we have this list of about 6,000 people we know experienced the massacre. This stuff will be all on our website. I mean, it's really groundbreaking work that we are doing together. We send out, as you know, descendants, a weekly descendant email to make sure that you are involved, make sure you know what's going on. We don't want anyone to say, well, I didn't know what was happening. Read your emails. We got a descendant hotline. You can call in anytime. We got a descendant contact form. You can contact us anytime. And then we do our quarterly descendant Zoom town hall. So we want to be in connection with you on a continual, consistent basis. because you're the reason we do this work. It is because of you that we do this work. We are launching today a new do-it-yourself descendant genealogy landing page, where a lot of things I'm telling you now, you go to our website, justiceforgreenwood.org, you can get this information, you can figure out without any ambiguity what our process is and how do you become chronicled in our system. And that's important because we believe that we're going to be successful with our litigation. We believe that resources are going to come. And that's why this is important. Yes, we believe that 100%. So even when you're in a network, you're chronicled, and you have your documents, send in your family members. Get them on board because it's going to, when it hits, it's going to hit. So far, we recorded 36 descendant stories. We have 24 more we're going to get today. Here's an example when we talk about the descendant story.
So for me, Justice for Greenwood would look like having our place in history, having our place in the history books. It would look like restoring the Greenwood section of town, and for all of the businesses that were destroyed, to have those businesses, black businesses there again.
That we're able to have businesses here, Greenwood and North Tulsa, that I don't even have to step out of North Tulsa if I need anything. That's doctors, lawyers, hospitals, the grocery stores, real estate. I mean, anything, my daily needs, if we don't have to step out of North Tulsa to go and get it.
My generation, we're very hopeful for the future, and we're passionate, and I think we can change the world. But I think in order to change the world, we need the resources to help change the world.
Right, so we want to make sure we get your story so you can be up here next year. So our second program we call Fight for Our Rights and Our Dignity. And we named it that because there was a survivor who passed away right before we filed this last litigation. And his name was Hal Singer. Some of you may have heard of Hal Singer. He was a very famous musician. And he moved to France because he felt in 1968, because he felt like America would never be fair to black people. Well, he probably was right. But he sent the letter back in 2007. Well, let me tell you, I was talking to him, getting ready to file this case, and he was blind. He was on hospice. He had a stroke, and he was really just very close to death. And I felt bad calling him, and I felt like I was bothering him. And I talked to his wife, Arlette Singer, and I said, should I stop calling you guys? This is a tough time. And she admonished me. And she said, absolutely not. Hal is going to fight for his family until he takes his last breath. And she said, I'm going to send you something. She sent me a letter that Hal had written to Professor Ogletree and Johnny Copper back in 2007, after we had lost all that litigation and lost, it looked like it was just no hope. And he sent the letter, and the letter simply said, I'll paraphrase, that no matter how unfair America is to black people, we must continue and always fight for our rights and our dignity. And we say that's correct. And that's what we named this program. And it's very simple. Our priority is, number one, to support litigation and legal strategies to hold the perpetrators of the massacre accountable. That is what this program is about. But we also, number two, seek to identify and push for laws and policies that will build wealth back to the descendants and the Greenwood community. That is what this program is about. And I am so proud because we've made some tremendous progress in this area. The historic litigation that we filed in September of 2020, we had an historic victory just a couple of weeks ago on May 2nd, 2022, the first time in this country that a case related to a race massacre of black people has the opportunity to move forward. Yes, that is amazing. We did that together as a team, as a descendant community, as our survivors who was in court, not just in May, but also in September. It is such a tremendous feeling to know that our work is making a difference. It is such a tremendous feeling knowing that we should have the opportunity for the first time in over 100 years, Lawrence, to have the opportunity to get documents that have been hidden from us, to know who the perpetrators were, to understand the totality of the destruction. Because we only know about 5% of what actually happened. We only know about 5% of who participated. We only know about 5% was stolen from us. And we want it all back. Don't you want it back? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what are we asking for specifically? I'm not going to go through everything, but I just want to make it clear. This case is not about money, as I said on the video. This is about restoring what was lost. This is about making this community whole. This is not about any individual. There are individuals listed on the lawsuit, but it's not about the individuals. This is a public nuisance case. We're saying we need to abate this nuisance, that all these things need to be done. We need a land trust. We need emotional and mental health training. We need a victim compensation fund. We need a hospital. We need the highway movement. We need policing to stop shooting and killing us for no reason. And that's what we're going to put forward. Obviously, I'm not the judge. We don't make the final determination, but this is what we're fighting for. So I want everyone to understand, this is what we're going for. We believe that all these things are necessary and more to fully restore what was stolen from us, to get us back where we're supposed to be. You agree? In addition to our historic litigation of public nuisance, we also have several other cases going. I'm not going to get in depth with them, but I just want you to know that the legal team is working, trying to get documents of things that have been hidden. We have open record litigations going, and we have some other cases that we're going to be filing pretty soon. So we're going to continue to fight on every front. We have had, and a lot of people don't know that we've had several meetings with the United States Department of Justice, asking them to open an official investigation into the criminal matter. Remember, I'm not a criminal attorney. This has never been investigated by any law enforcement institution. Never. And we want that to happen. So we're praying for that. We're going to continue to push them. Because you remember last year, President Joe Biden came right in this Greenwood Culture Center, and he said that he was going to do everything he could to get us justice. That's what he said, right? You heard him say that, right? We want that promise to be fulfilled. Yes, we want that promise. President Joe Biden, we want that promise to be fulfilled. We're working with our partners at the Congressional Black Caucus. This is my frat brother, Representative Hank Johnson, who introduced the Tulsa Greenwood Massacre Claims Accountability Act. We're still working with them on that. So we, like I said, we're working in the courtroom. We're working at the executive level. We're working at the congressional level. And yeah, y'all don't even know. We're working with our sister, the VP Kamala Harris, who is a supporter of ours. She is in contact with us. We regularly correspond with her office. She sends correspondence, and she's with us, guys. I just want you to know that we have partners. Despite those in this city, the City of Tulsa, the Chamber, the white power elite structure that do not want to see us successful, we have people that are fighting with us, and that's why we will be successful. Our third program is our Black Wall Street Legacy Fund. This is something that we did not really set out to do. What I mean is this program, we wanted those who perpetrated the harm to provide the resources to pay for what they did. Well, we saw last year that even though they raised $30 million for their History Center last year, they didn't give you a penny as a survivor or as a descendant. And we just didn't feel like that was right. So we created our little small organization, we created this fund because we can provide some grants to our survivors and our descendants. And we've done that. And so our small little grassroots organization has given over $350,000 in grants to survivors, survivor organizations. Now, y'all don't think that's a big deal? I mean, hey, come on. We gave $100,000 to each living survivor. We gave $39,000 to the 13 surviving churches that survived the massacre. Morning Star, Metropolitan Baptist Church, Paradise Baptist Church, Mount Zion Baptist Church, Burning AME, Wesley Chapel. I'm sorry I remember all the names, but they all got a check. And then we gave $5,000 right here to the Greenwood Culture Center, where we're here right now today, to upgrade and pay for their Wi-Fi for the next 3 years. Because we love this institution, it's a community icon that we all use, and we wanted to pour in and provide things to people that we all can benefit from. And as we continue to grow this Black Wall Street Legacy Fund, it is important once again for you to be chronicled. So when we have additional resources that we can provide to our descendant community, you need to be chronicled so you can get those resources. What do you have to be to get those resources? Chronicled. Okay, let's get busy. And our last program, and I'm getting almost finished here, our last program is what we call the Btw Initiative. You know what the Btw stands for? Booker T. Washington High School. All right. The heart of Greenwood. The heart of Greenwood. If it was not a Btw or Booker T. Washington High School, there would never have been a Greenwood. There would never been a Black Wall Street. So this is our Btw Initiative, is what we call education and truth telling. This is where we tell our story in our way. We tell the truth about the massacre, and we tell the truth about before the massacre. Because Greenwood would not have happened if the people didn't have three things. They had land ownership, they had a freedom mind state, and they had wealth and innovation concentration. Those are the same three things we need now to rebuild not just Greenwood, but Black communities all over this nation. We need land ownership, a freedom mind state, and economic and wealth concentration. And so when we tell the story of how Greenwood became Greenwood, and then we tell the story of the massacre, and then we tell the story of how Greenwood was able to rebuild itself, and then it was destroyed again through urban development. All of that is part of our story. But then the story is going to be how we rebuild again, even bigger and even better, because we're going to have land ownership, we're going to have a freedom mind state, and we're going to have economic and wealth creation. And in that, we did a great study in a paper with the New School. This is on our website. It's called the Color of Wealth Report. It talks about where we are and what we need to get to. We do our weekly email to our survivors. We have over 5,000, I believe 5,000 individuals on our email list that we talk to on a weekly basis, explaining to them what we're doing, educating them. Now this right here just happened just yesterday. This just happened just yesterday. We acquired one of the most rarest books related to Greenwood in the world. 1941 Greenwood Directory. wish I could, I can't, and we gotta get it preserved, we gotta get it properly protected. But we're gonna digitize this, it will be on our website. It is amazing and beautiful. We had, even after the massacre, 20 years after the massacre, we had so many businesses. We had so many people in our community. And to look at this book, I've been working on this for a couple of months and finally solidified the deal, got the book in our possession yesterday. And it's going to be such a resource for us. And it's the work that we're doing with our genealogy, our oral history. It is just amazing that God and our ancestors blessed us to have this book that's 82 years old, 81 years old, in our possession about our community. Our education team our digital team is amazing. Derek and Andy's here, and Chad, and Sade Williams, who's in New York. They're putting out great content each and every day, connecting people to our work. I've given, in our organization, over the last year, over 50 presentations nationally about our work, done over 125 or 150 interviews. I got an interview, my team is telling me, you gotta wrap up, but I got an interview coming up here in about 5 minutes, so I need to finish up here. Telling my story, talking about what we're doing, because it's not about me, it's about the work. It's about we. That's why this is called We Are Greenwood. That's why the t-shirt you have is We Are Greenwood. I'm just a kid from North Tulsa, worked at Gibbs Candy Store, hung out at Lincoln Park in Chamberlain, went to Hawthorne, kicked it up with Booker T, running around on a football game, playing back, throwing football. It's such a joy for me to represent our community about who we are and what we are and where we're going. So this is a great work. You can see I'm totally excited about it. I got to get to a close, but I want to let you know that we've identified those insurance companies who didn't pay those claims, and we're in contact with them, telling them you need to pay these claims. We identified those banks who kept our money, who are now owned by two banks that you've heard of before, Chase Bank and a little old bank in Tulsa called Bank of Oklahoma. They are the successors to those banks that's kept the money of our people when they were didn't have their bank once that fire that was burnt up. This gets me fired up, as you can see. I get fired up when I think about this. Our people's property was burnt down, and then when they try to get their money out, the bank said, where's your bank book? Well, my bank book burnt up. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we're gonna keep your money. Well, those two banks right there are the successors of those banks. We've been in contact with them, and we're still trying to get them to do something for our community. All right, I got two minutes. I want to say that our organization, and with all of you, last year we exposed the false marketing campaign that the City of Tulsa tried to tell the world that Tulsa was triumphant. They actually had the nerve, the audacity, the unmitigated gall to lie in the USA Today that said Tulsa, Oklahoma is leading America's during the racial year. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah. So we called that out, that false marketing campaign, and we turned that narrative of Tulsa triumph to Tulsa home. We did that. And they put our dear survivor, that Mother Randall, on the front page of New York Times Magazine on May 30th. Then what does justice look like? And then people like John Legend said, I can't come stand with the perpetrators. I'm going to stand with the survivors. And until the survivors are done right and this community is done right, I cannot stand with the perpetrators. City of Tulsa, Chamber of Commerce, Tulsa County, Tulsa. Woo! We did this. So I gotta get to a close here. I'm just warming up. I'm just getting started. I gotta get to a close here. How can you join with us? All of you descendants already know this, but you join with us. Number one, donate to this cause. This takes resources. The team has to be paid. They want to pay their mortgage. They want to pay, have a roof and things. We need money for the work. These programs take money. We don't get any local support from the local white power structure. So we need the support and the donations for all of you and for those who are listening across this nation, and we're getting it. But just as importantly, we need you to spread this message. So when you get those emails, when you get those texts, when you learn about our Zoom calls, our town hall meetings, tell your family, tell your friends. So the more people are talking about justice for Greenwood, the better it is, the more likely it is it will happen faster. And if you are a descendant or you know a descendant, have them join our community. They have to be in our community because we're doing great things. And you want to be in this community, so it's free. You don't have to pay anything. We're going to do your genealogy. We're going to chronicle you. And we're going to get you set up and ready to go when these resources start flowing. I can't tell you when that's going to happen. I always tell my clients, I can't make any promises outside. We're going to work hard on your behalf. And that's what I can promise you. But you need to be in the community. You need to be chronicled. So when these resources start flowing, whenever it happens, you be in line for them. Does that make sense? Is that all right? All right, listen, I got to end here, but I just want to hear justice for who? Justice for who? Justice for who? All right, I'm going to leave here, but I'm going to introduce real quickly my colleague, Kate Ritchie, who's going to take over from me. She is a dear sister of mine. We've worked together for over a decade. She is a fighter for people that need equity and justice. She's someone who has dealt with this city power structure and has for years told them very plainly, you need to do the right thing. And she's got all her degrees. She got a bachelor's and a master's in political science. She's a debate coach. She's all those things, but she's my sister. If I'm going to get in the foxhole and have to fight these folks, I want her right next to me. And she's going to talk to you about this project dealing with the Evans Penton and this $225 million development project that's happening here in Greenwood, and how we're going to be a part of that and make sure that we get some of that and what we have to do to make sure that happens. So give it up for my dear sister, Kate Ritchie.
Good morning. How's everybody feeling today?
Great.
Well, Demario spent the morning going over the incredible achievements that everyone has accomplished together, and I want to shift gears a little bit and put our eyes on the horizon, specifically right over there. The Evans Penton project is slated to be built over by where the Legacy Fest is set up in the old Ironworks building. So we're going to talk about that and talk about representation today, specifically representing you, those of you in the room that are descendants, and representing survivors and descendants of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, transparency and reporting in city development projects. They're doing a lot of these development projects in your name. And we saw how well that worked out with Greenwood Rising and the History Center. I've got the same image up here that Demario was just talking to you all about. Tulsa, City of Tulsa announces we solved racism. Give me a break. So this is their advertisement for the Greenwood Rising History Center. And I want to take a few moments before we talk about Evans Penton and look back a little bit about what happened in the development of that museum. At every single stage of the development of Greenwood Rising, the planning, the development, the building, the design, the creation of the museum, the exhibits, the content, the groundbreaking, the opening, at every stage, the lack of serious outreach and incorporation of the perspectives of living survivors and descendants was shocking to me. This contrasts very sharply with the way the city and the Centennial Commission used Greenwood survivors and descendants. Their public statements and the PR materials they used to raise that $30 million. They used Greenwood's legacy, the photographs and stories of long past survivors. Their life stories were used liberally and without shame. I want to compare the Greenwood Rising Museum development with the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial and how they chose to represent survivors. And I want to cite a few quick facts about what happened in the development of Greenwood Rising first. So of all the people that are still currently listed publicly on the website of the Greenwood Rising History Center, the leadership, the staff, the founding board, just one of them identifies as a descendant. The project manager of the Centennial Commission and the Greenwood Rising Memorial Project, near the end of the construction, before the opening of the museum, he was asked by a student at Tulsa Community College during an interview, if he could share some stories that he had learned along the way that had been passed down about the massacre from any survivors and descendants. He admitted that he knew none. I find that baffling. He cited only 2 descendants that he had even interacted with in the planning and the development of the museum. At the construction groundbreaking, 1 descendant was listed in attendance in the press and in photographs. At the opening ceremony of the museum, out of dozens of speakers slated for the program to open the museum, 2 were descendants. And finally, this one connects, I think, most directly with what we're about to talk about. The programming that surrounded the opening of the museum, the city and the Centennial Commission hosted an Economic Empowerment Day a year ago on June 1st. We're going to talk a lot about economic empowerment, what the city is promising descendants with Evans Fund too. But they put out a 64-page document. They marketed it emblazoned across the front of their Economic Empowerment Day materials, from tragedy to triumph. It was slick and glossy, and on all 64 of those pages, the word survivor or descendant appeared just once in a passage referring to the congressional testimony that was actually coordinated by Demario Simmons, the congressional testimony of Mother Fletcher. Someone mentioned once that we need to remember the victims of the massacre. And out of nearly 50 people recognized in the planning and invited to speak at the economic empowerment events on June 1st for the commemoration, none of them were descendants of the massacre. 0. So apparently the intergenerational wealth that was stolen on that day, the lives, families that were destroyed, that was not top of mind on the economic empowerment agenda of city leaders when they referenced the massacre. Whose tragedy and whose triumph are they talking about? Because they're certainly not talking with any of you all, talking to the survivors, if not massacre descendants. Whose economic empowerment are they concerned with? What should have happened? What should that process have looked like? How does the Greenwood Rising History Center and what the city did compare to similar memory projects? Let's look at a couple of them. This is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum to the left. In the center, we see the Manzanar National Historical Site, which pays tribute to victims of Japanese internment. And then finally, this is the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial Museum, which some of you may recognize. The United States Holocaust Museum was created and steered and founded by a Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, along with many other survivors that were involved from the very beginning. A lot of folks don't know this, but the German government actually attempted, since the late 70s all the way into the 90s, they tried to get part negotiated with the United States government to, quote, is their fundamental right of co-determination in how Holocaust history should be told abroad. The German government wanted to be involved, and it was through negotiations with all of the survivors on the founding board of this museum that wasn't able to happen. To me, the German government attempting to involve themselves in the design of a Holocaust Memorial Museum is not so different than what has happened here in Tulsa with the city taking control, or attempting to control the narrative around the Race Massacre. But it was the role of survivors and the museum's board that stopped that from happening. And as recently as 2008, there were still 91 Holocaust survivors listed as consultant staff. With the internment museum here in the middle, many stakeholders were involved in the planning, including hundreds of Japanese American survivors of internment, civil rights groups, the local community, and internment victims were sought out especially for their input on how the site should be interpreted. And finally, the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial Museum, just months after the bombing, the task force started to begin to think about how they were going to memorialize the events that occurred on April 19th in 1995. And a crucial component of that planning was that family members of those killed and the living survivors. In fact, I found out something interesting. The task force that was initially hired, they hired the same consultant who built the famed and historic Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., was initially supposed to run the process for the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial. They hired him. But task force leaders insisted that the design review committee include bombing survivors and victims' relatives from the very beginning. And when the consultant that they had hired balked at that and said he did not want non-professionals involved in the development of the memorial, they fired him. Could you imagine if the city of Tulsa had approached the development of Greenwood Rising in the same way? So we know what should have happened. Unfortunately, that did not happen here. It was not through the fault, the tireless advocates, descendants, members of the community, people here in this room. It was the fault of other people involved in city government, in the Centennial Commission, people that have an interest in capitalizing on the piece of the development pie that comes from capitalizing on grief and the memories, the ancestors, the cultural capital, the life stories, and the tragedy of an entire community. And it disgusts me, frankly, how little respect that has been shown to people in this room. To add insult to injury, the development projects that are moving forward and are on track are seemingly set to follow the same trajectory as Greenwood Rising. They are using the story of Greenwood as a public relations backdrop to continue with business as usual and earn profits as usual for the usual suspects. Just for Greenwood is here to make sure that that doesn't keep happening and to work with you all. So what are we going to do about it? How can the City of Tulsa and their development partners be persuaded to prioritize participation from descendants in these projects that are being done in your name? Promises and scare quotes. I am not really a trusting person, never been mistaken for one, and I'm a child of a military family and a serious student of political science. So I spent a lot of my younger life kind of with a naive belief in civic values and the democratic system. With elected officials, staff in positions of public trust, when they make statements on the record in public, I used to believe them. 13 years of experience dealing with the City of Tulsa has taught me better, and trust has sort of left my vocabulary. This $224 million development is going to be located a half a mile from downtown on the eastern edge of historic Greenwood over here. It's 120,000 square foot, and they are making a lot of promises. I want you to keep that $224 million amount in mind when we talk later about how much money is actually being set aside to seed entrepreneurship and business efforts. What you're going to see in the following slides, this is how the city is presenting this project, what they are promising. There is a lot to be excited about if this project stays true to its mission. It could be transformative. But we are going to keep a watchful eye on those promises and make sure that they are fulfilled. I know you can't read the text here, but this is taken from the RFP that the city sent out and pitched to different developers to get involvement in picking who is going to build this project. Greenwood and Massacre Descendants are highlighted prominently in all of the promotional literature surrounding this pitch. If you go to their website, if you attended any of the public meetings, any of the news stories, they say that this project is for descendants of the massacre. You can read it up here to the right. And that is front and center. It is not being downplayed. They are putting that front and center. They are highlighting that as a way to raise funds and awareness for the project. Specifically, the way that these proposals were scored, who won the contract, which we know now, it was announced a couple of weeks ago, we know who's going to be building Evanston too. But the way they decided who won that contract is scoring each proposal, and the proposals that ensured these things were given advantage in the process. Incubating Greenwood and North Tulsa businesses with below market rent, establishing North Tulsa, they're promising a community land trust at the end of this, when they finish building this development. They are promising workforce development, apprenticeship, entrepreneurship programs. They're also promising to sell equity shares in the development, that you could hold an investment share, a minimum investment that a local nonprofit will match, that you can hold and cash in on later. That's what's being promised. So we know who's going to be building this development. Team Alchemy, which is a partnership between Be Good Development, someone who lives here locally, and J.E. Dunn Capital Partners, which is a national construction company. What do they have planned for this site? It is supposed to be a space celebrating the spirit of Greenwood's entrepreneurship, and Demario spent the morning talking about the Greenwood love story, talking about the tragedy, but paying homage to that entrepreneurial spirit. We know what was possible and what was destroyed, and this is what the team that has been selected to build this new development is saying they are going to celebrate. Let's keep that in mind. So this is specifically what they are planning on building. food hall, retail, maker space for artists, offices and incubation space for local businesses, some restaurants. This high-rise development is planned. More dining, more retail, multifamily residential, office space, performance and theater space. Now, none of this has really been filled out yet. We know the broad strokes, but the devil is really in the details here, and that is something that we're gonna all have to be watchful for. This is just written out in text, kind of what I've already showed you in the picture. But Team Alchemy aims to place this entire site after building into a land trust benefiting the Greenwood community. This is from Team Alchemy's proposal. They are promising the world in terms of economic development and wealth creation. They want the factory to serve as a witness to a thriving community with a new purpose, fueling wealth building as a conduit to generational wealth that will sustain prosperity, an anchor for North Tulsa as a whole. So what is next? This is what they have promised. They're about to really get rolling now that they've picked the developer. But the procurement process is concluded. During the procurement process, there were public meetings held, several of them actually. I'm curious, is anyone here able to attend or give input at any of those meetings while they were planning this development? Okay. They compiled all that information, the stakeholder results, and now that the procurement process is over and the RFP has been awarded, participation from the community members that they claim this development is being done for is sort of murky. I'm not going to say it's non-existent, but now that they've won the RFP, there are no formalized processes for incorporating community development. So what happens? How do we get from the headline of what they plan to the nitty-gritty of who actually receives tenancy advantage, who receives development grants to start their own business, who receives preferential office space, who are the descendants of the massacre that are going to reap the wealth building benefits that they are promising, and how are they going to get there? We need to be curious about what this is going to take several years to build. We are going to be vigilant, resourceful, and watchful. What Justice for Greenwood, as Demario gave you all of our programming this morning, we are concerned with making sure that descendants of the massacre are forefront, as they have promised. So how the development team for Evans Benjamin is going to achieve these equitable results is a question that I have. There are not only many unanswered questions about this development, there are a lot of questions that aren't even being asked, and we're committed to asking those questions. So we want to serve as a conduit between our survivor and descendant network and the Evans Benjamin development team. Here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we do not have the policy tools in place that a lot of other places have to have robust involvement with any kind of team like they have in other places. Places like Atlanta, Los Angeles, Denver, anytime there are large, multi-million-dollar developments like this in other places, before they built the Staples Center in Los Angeles, community members whose homes were going to be raised for that, whose air was going to be polluted, whose communities were going to be turned into a parking lot, banded together and were able to negotiate, contractual agreements with the city and with the developers to ensure that their rights were protected, that they got, first in line for contracts, for quality jobs. So negotiating something like a community benefits agreement is something in the very long term I hope that we're able to accomplish in the city of Tulsa. But right now, this development is so far along the process. The legal tools that we have left are few, and the tools that we are going to have to capitalize on are a little scrappier than that. We are going to never leave them alone, basically, and make sure that what they say publicly, what they generate fundraising off of, what they're $224 million for people who are developing this site. but they're not the only ones getting rich off this project while promising to make you rich. It's unconscionable. So since we don't have a formal pathway, we'll be using lots of alternative routes to ensure that the results are equitable, not just equitable processes. But at the end of the day, when you walk into that high rise, when you walk into the refurbished ironworks building, it's not just one Descendants business there with a bunch of photographs on the wall, and everyone else that occupies the building has no connection or relationship to this community, to the massacre. We want to make sure to hold them up to what they are promising you. So moving forward, today and moving forward, we're asking for your questions, your ideas, your demands, your solutions, your vision of what Greenwood in the future is going to look like. What do you want to see filled out in this big, beautiful building that they're planning on building? And in the makerspace they're planning on building? What is it that you want? What we're planning on, just checking my time. What we're planning on doing next is sending a letter to the development team, to the contractors that have been hired, to the City of Tulsa's steering committee for this project, that offers Justice for Greenwood to them as both as a resource, whatever we can do to help them connect descendants and survivors to development opportunities, but also to let them know that we have our eye on the projects, and we want to know how they're going to be reporting on any of these equity matrices that they're promising you. We want data. We want to see how many tenants fill these businesses, how many grants are given to startup businesses, and how many of those people were descendants. We want it written down so we can hold them accountable. So we're going to be sending a letter, and all of the descendants in this room will be receiving an email from Justice for Greenwood and from myself with a copy of that letter that says, we are Justice for Greenwood, here's who we are, here's what we represent, here's what we think needs to happen with this development. And we want to occupy that space, to sit in the middle and be a resource for them and agitate on your behalf to make sure that the end product is something quality that actually will build wealth for generations of Tulsans from here on out. So I want you to be on the lookout for your emails when you see that letter. We would love for you, your descendant, to personally sign on and let the city know that you're also paying attention, that you're also watching, and you're not going to let them build a new development that does nothing for you in your name. And then also, here in just a few minutes, I would love to have a little bit of discussion about some of the wealth building opportunities that are being promised. So we have about 10, 15 minutes left. Before we have some discussions at our tables, I want to look at a few of the questions that are unanswered in this development and how it's going to be proceeding. Outside of the city and the Team Alchemy staff, who's going to be involved in picking the vendors, in hiring employees? How will descendants' feedback be solicited? How's it going to be incorporated and measured? We want to know how the workforce plan is going to move forward. Planning the construction, programming, the tenancy arrangements, the vendors, landscaping, custodial contracts. How will these contracts be awarded, and how are descendants going to be front in line when those contracts are awarded, and how are we going to enforce that? We want to know who they're going to be hiring locally, so that recruiting and screening and hiring and retaining vendors and contractors and employees will reflect North Tulsa, and will put descendants at the front of the line. This is a really important question because I think this is one of those make or break moments that advocacy can step in and interrupt. We have to do it in a clever way. Any salespeople in this room? Anyone do sales for a living? Good sellers? Well, when they go to filling those buildings, like both parts of the development with tenants, whether it be a startup entrepreneur or whether it be a restaurant or a retail space, if the sales and development team are incentivized, remember the City of Tulsa is building this for tax revenue and tax revenue. The major benefit that they get from this development is money into their coffers. So if the sales and development team are incentivized by a portion of contract price, that creates a perverse incentive to crowd out descendants, North Tulsans, and anybody else that does not come with the highest ticket price associated with their tenancy. So So we need to know that. We need to know how they're actually going to be making decisions at the very end of this project and who's going to fill this space. And if their sales team is incentivized monetarily to auction off that space to the highest bidder, then we know that their promises are not going to be fulfilled. Finally, what asset building opportunities specifically are part of these entrepreneurship incubators? Anybody in here work to start a business, help a family member start a business, have a business now, planning on starting a business? I see a couple heads, I see some heads nodding, some hands raised. Awesome, congratulations. Well, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there are enormous barriers to entry for startup for entrepreneurs who lack capital, and there are ongoing barriers for existing business. I can tell you right now, I know those of you in here who have businesses or looking to start them or have been in the past know this. The barrier to starting a business is not the fact that you don't have an open plan office, lots of green space to start your business. That is not the barrier to entry for most folks who are looking to start a business. The barrier for entry is going to be things like affordable housing, affordable childcare, reliable transportation. We want to know these things about the Evanston development. If they're really incubating businesses, are they providing people with the building blocks they need to create a life that can create a thriving business and really re-energize and re-emerge the spirit of Greenwood that was destroyed so many years ago. And we want to make sure that this space is safe from surveillance and racist policing. Has that even been discussed by any members of the development team? How are business owners who lack capital going to be able to start businesses? So I said at the beginning, $224 million is the ticket price for the development. The amount of money they've actually raised to seed businesses so far, $100,000. $100,000. So they're going to build a $224 million project. And so far they're only planning on seeding $100,000 in businesses to Descendants. That to me is an inadequate work for that. So we want to also make sure we know what kind of guarantees are in place to ensure that these are quality jobs. I notice a lot of the jobs they're offered are in retail and restaurant work. It is not a wealth building opportunity to offer a minimum wage restaurant job. And I worked restaurant jobs. We all, work jobs when we were younger, but that is not rebuilding intergenerational wealth. And we're not going to let that happen. They're not going to fill retail and office space full of no benefit, low wage job and call it an economic anchor. It's not going to happen. So if we have a little time here, I want to just do a little short simulation. If you don't have enough people at your table to have a conversation with, feel free to hop over to anybody who looks friendly. These folks over here are real friendly. I don't know if they're actually having a conversation right now, but up front, so friendly. In the weeks and months ahead, we want to have these conversations with you. And an example of that conversation, this is a very complex development, and there are lots of issues to be discussed, literally hundreds. But what I want to start with discussion and hear from some of you today is to talk about jobs, jobs and entrepreneurship. We've all had jobs. We've all helped our brothers, our sisters, our kids find jobs. We all know what we are looking for in a quality job. So I would love to have a short discussion and then hear back from anybody who wants to. What is it that constitutes a quality job for you? I have some preliminary things listed here, but I would love for you to discuss that and report back, because we want to tell the development team at Evanston to, not just in this category, but in every other category that has to do with wealth creation, what it is that you want. If you want to talk also about what you would need to start a business, if we have business owners or potential business owners in here, I would love to hear about that too. So let's just take about 5 minutes and have a little conversation. And then if anybody wants to report back after that and tell us what you talked about, I would love to hear it. Make a friend. Quality job. On fearless leader, Mr. Simmons, to join us to close us out. But I would love to hear back from anyone at any of the tables about the conversations that you had. Quality job, starting a business, what is it that you actually need? Anybody like to jump in? And/or any questions about Evanston's development and what Justice for Greenwood is planning? I'd be happy to take those now. And I'm going to step away from the mic because I don't actually need it for right now. Yes, please. I'm going to do my best to repeat on the mic. Thank you so much. I'm going to repeat that and paraphrase it as well as I can, just for our folks who are tuning in online and for the record. It doesn't do any good to provide job training to someone way across town if they have no way to get there. It doesn't do any good to offer somebody a job somewhere if they have nowhere they can afford to leave their children with. Or if they can, they pay every penny that they're making into childcare. So I think that's an excellent point, and hopefully the door is open, this development, they have plans, and that's all it is right now, it's all on paper. Hopefully, if what they say is true, that they are looking to partner with Descendants and partner with the community to provide what is really needed, that's something that's possible. On-site childcare would be a game changer. It would be an actual opportunity and experience for many people who for otherwise it would not be. I think that's just such an excellent point. Through my research and studying the City of Tulsa and the wealth gap here, it's shocking, and it comes from somewhere. Obviously, the massacre has left a lot of scars in the community, and in terms of the wealth that was stolen that day, you see that in the data. In terms of transportation, a lot of people lack access to reliable transportation to get them to a quality job, to earn more money, to get that reliable transportation back. So it's just such an excellent point. Yes. Never knew my phone.
Not only just have training for people, but on-the-job training. Because they can make money and they can learn. And there's so many jobs out there, so many things they can learn to do. They can build their own businesses. They don't need anybody to tell them what they want them to do. They know what they want to do. They can do it. They can train it. That's a good example for the children, seeing them do it. There's teachers. They can have young people that watch children. They could be daycare children, teachers. They could be psychologists. They could be psychiatrists. They could be drug rehabs, and so many children are born with problems, or they're around a lot of drugs. There's millions of things that can happen, if it can happen. But because they're saying they're going to do that and put aside so much money, that's the biggest thing in the world. Because we can plan, we can say what we want to do and what we feel is right, but that does not mean it's going to happen. They can do just like they did with Greenwood Rising. Do what they think people want to see and not what's right.
Thank you so much. Well put. Hopefully, they're not going to do the same thing. I mean, there are more eyes on them this time, and we're going to do everything we can. We're going to need everybody's help, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure the end result is something that's actually useful. And I think some on-the-job training, they're going to be filling this space with maker space and artist space and incubators for startups. That's got to be possible, right? It's got to be more than just restaurant jobs available. That's something that we can make happen. They've got the space for it, got the money for it, and They're gonna spend $224 million. They've got to end up with something people can actually use, get a quality job. Anybody else have the link? See it in. And you have to hold it closer to your face for it to work. I'm getting direction.
Thank you. My name is Ray Pleasant, and I'm a descendant. It's weird hearing my own voice like this. And I own an art studio in Midtown. I moved back to Tulsa. Okay. I moved to Tulsa during the Centennial last year because I believed in Greenwood and the community here. In terms of what they're trying to do here, I personally don't think Black people need eternal incubation. I think there's Black people ready to go with the knowledge and experience now to start doing what they're trying to do. In terms of a maker space, bless them, but artists need actual studio space that belongs to them, that's sufficient in size and resources to generate the products that they're making. I have my own 800 square foot studio in Midtown, and dealing with the landlord is hell. And we're going to court to see if we can dissolve the lease because we both don't want to deal with each other anymore. So in terms of a maker space, I'm wanting to own the building where my studio is. I'm at that point in my life. We were talking about trademark. I mean, I have the business, my studio name is trademarked to myself. I've had to deal with plagiarism from mostly white people. I've had to deal with contracts unpaid from mostly white people. And, you know, we were talking about how the name Juneteenth, people are trying to trademark the name Juneteenth who are not Black. The name Greenwood needs to be trademarked because I moved here with all of these applications pending for places, jobs that used Greenwood. My grandmother is in the Eddie Faye Gates collection talking about her husband surviving. Okay, it's a problem. So I think it's beyond like incubating Black people and keeping us in this internal holding tank, because they know that there are Black people ready to go, ready to sue them, ready to be their competition in business. So I think we just need to get in there and get going. And you're gonna make mistakes. I've made mistakes as a business owner. Sometimes I think coming to Tulsa was the mistake, but we just have to keep going and keep trying and keep holding people accountable. And things like legal activism are extremely important. What he's doing, putting this on the public record, creating landmark accomplishments in the courtroom that lawyers will study for the end of time and learn from what he's doing. So that's everything. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm sorry, you're right, just have a problem. And there's no other way to put it. And the makerspace, I'm really happy to have your input from an artist, especially looking at the drawings, even just seeing what they're planning for the makerspace. It kind of just looks like a hub for some 3D printers and some desks. It doesn't look like an artist studio. And we want the space to be useful, and they don't have to build exactly what is planned right now. They can build whatever they want, and if they're truly committed to fulfilling the promises they've made so far, we need to get that message through loud and clear and they don't want to hear it. A lot of them don't want to hear the message, so there's going to be static in between. And I think you're absolutely right. That word incubation is so strange. And capital is really what I think of. Most businesses need to grow, and that's another message we're going to have to get across. Thank you so much. We had Mr. Solomon Simmons in here, and then he fled again. Big call. Please be too soon. Anyone else want to make a comment before we have our closing? Yes. He's supposed to close us out. So I'm gonna, if you're on our Senate email list, you'll get, and anyone else that's on that email list, you'll be receiving an email within the next 2 weeks that has a draft letter that we're sending to every member of the cities. There are a couple different, it's a collaborative team, but to them and to the development team at JE Dunn, the team they hired just to work on this project here in Tulsa, letting them know what we plan to do, how we plan to be involved, and offering ourselves as a resource. So I would love everybody's input and reply. Please, reply back to us. So if you want to sign on that letter, and then what I envision moving forward is something like a steering committee. We want Descendants to be available to provide their input and feedback to them whenever it's needed, whenever it's asked for, and when it's not asked for. When we have something to say about what they're doing that they don't like. So, thank you so much for your time. Okay, great. Well, I have the pleasure of adjourning. Do we know what time we're reassembling this afternoon, Jordan? 2? We're going to have some barbecue. Is that what we have? So we would love to see each and every one of you back this afternoon at 2 p.m. And we're going to have some food, and we have some more social activities planned to just kind of hang out and get to know each other. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to be here, and if anyone has any questions about what we discussed, my name's Kate. I'd love to meet you, and I'll hopefully see you this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kate, you can say anything, but thanks to the audience.
Thanks, internet audience. Have a great day.